Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cognito Key. Today we're going to talk about something we use every single day, but maybe don't think about too much. It's that invisible force that powers, well, pretty much everything in our modern lives. Yep, we're talking about electrical energy. I mean, think about it. You flip a switch, boom, there's light. You plug in your phone, and it just starts charging. But have you ever, really stopped to wonder what's actually going on inside those wires? What is that power that comes out of the socket? Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down today. Okay, so to really understand what's happening, we need to zoom in, way in. I'm talking about getting down to the microscopic level, right inside those copper wires that are hidden in our walls. And you know what? At its core, it's actually pretty simple. Electrical energy is basically just the energy that's created when these super tiny particles, called electrons, start moving around. When they travel from one spot to another, they create this kind of flow. And that flow is what we call electricity.
Here's a good way to picture it. Think of a river. A still pond of water doesn't really do much, right? But a powerful flowing river, that can turn a huge water wheel. It's exactly the same idea with electrons. This moving stream of charges is what does all the heavy lifting. The actual work of lighting up your bulb or powering up your laptop.
So since this whole thing is about movement, that means electrical energy is really just a form of kinetic energy. It's the same kind of energy a moving car has or a ball flying through the air. It's simply energy in motion.
And this leads to a really important point. It's not just that the electrons are moving, but it's also about how fast they're moving. The faster this stream of charges flows, the more energy it's actually carrying. So it's pretty straightforward. More speed means more power.
All right, so we've got a handle on what it is. But the next obvious question is, how do we measure this stuff? I mean, how do you put a number on something you can't even see? Well, in the scientific world, the basic unit for measuring electrical energy is called the joule. You might also hear it called a watt-second. Don't worry, they're the exact same thing. Just think of the joule as the fundamental building block for all of this. But just saying 1 joule feels a little abstract, doesn't it? What does that even mean in the real world? What actually goes into making 1 single joule of energy?
Well, here's the formula, and it's quite simple. Imagine you have some electrical pressure. We call that a volt. And that pressure is pushing a certain amount of current. That's an ampere. If you let 1 volt push 1 ampere of current for just 1 second, the total energy you've just used is exactly 1 joule.
Okay, so the joule is great for scientists in a lab. But in reality, it's a teeny tiny amount of energy. Seriously, if your electricity company tried to bill you in joules, the number would have so many zeros, it would look crazy. That's why, for everyday life, we use a unit that's a lot more practical. And that, my friends, is where the kilowatt-hour comes into the picture. People usually just say kWh. So here's the simple way to remember it. Joules are for the lab, and kilowatt-hours are for your home. The kWh is the unit you'll actually find on your electricity bill every month. So this is the key part. When your electricity bill says you've used, say, 100 units, what it's really saying is that you've used 100 kilowatt hours. Yep, unit is just the everyday name we use for 1 kilowatt hour. And hey, here's a little fun fact for you. The kilowatt hour also has another, kind of old-fashioned name, a Board of Trade unit, or BOT unit. You probably won't see it much anymore, but it means the exact same thing. All right, I know that was a quick journey from tiny little electrons all the way to our electricity bills. So let's just take a second and recap the most important things we've covered. So if you're going to remember just 3 things, make it these. First, electrical energy is basically the kinetic energy of electrons on the move. Second, the tiny scientific unit for measuring it is the joule. And third, the practical, real-world unit that shows up on your bill is the kilowatt-hour, which everyone just calls a unit. And that leads me to a final question for you. Now that you know what a unit of electricity actually is, have a look around your house. What do you think is the biggest energy guzzler? Is it the geyser for hot water? The air conditioner on a hot day? Maybe the refrigerator that's running 24/7? It's definitely something interesting to think about. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today on Cognito Key. If you find this little explainer useful, it would be amazing if you could give it a like, maybe share it with a friend who's curious too. And of course, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what we break down next. Until then, stay curious.